Lamptey Show. My name is Joey. This week I'm joined by Neil.
Hello, Joey.
And by Imogen.
Hi, Joey.
Bloody football, eh?
Well, again, aren't we? Footballing.
Football is such a rascal, isn't it?
I have noticed.
What about moments of the week? Why don't we try and bring some semblance of sanity back to proceedings by going with something that the tried and trusted moment of the week? Neil, what are you going to go for?
Can I smash sanity out the window by going for a moment of the week from last week because I wasn't on and I still wanted to mention it. It made me laugh ever such a lot. It was Oggy, the man who has never once pronounced an H, inexplicably calling Callum O'Hare, which was just a top moment. I was just like, of all the people, he just never once pronounced. It's always O'Hare and everything else. And then this week he decided he tried to overcompensate, and it just sounded spectacular. So the moment of the fortnight was very much that.
Yeah, that is. I'd missed that, in fact, but that is.
I've got it on record. It's brilliant.
It's a lovely bit of business. And then Imogen, moment of the week.
Mark Robins picking me up from the depths. I felt low, I'll be honest, after the Middlesbrough game. I think we all probably felt a little bit like life wasn't worth living anymore. But he came back, Mark, and he did his pre-match interview, and he just very calmly and quietly repeated all the cliches that make me feel just that little bit better. You know, he said it was a marathon, not a sprint, which I'd forgotten.
That's true, yeah.
Apparently, we haven't had the same pre-season as everyone else.
We have not.
And I thought, oh, God, thank God he's here. And then I could see there was a twinkle in his eye pre-match against Reading. And I thought, he knows something here. Something's happening. Something's on. And the post-match interview with him was so glorious. He addressed that interviewer like he was an old friend. And I'm very much here for that. I loved it.
It was great. The only thing I'm really upset it was missing him saying the phrase "without a shadow," but not finishing the sentence. He's taken to using that. And again, a great moment of speech from that man. He was saying it the other way, without a shadow. I was like, yeah, I quite like that.
Yeah, it's good.
Lovely old job. I don't know how often I can keep using this as my moment of the week, but it's quite simply the very existence of Gustavo, which
I wonder why.
Well, bearing in mind that we've butchered his surname now so badly, I feel like I can only refer to him as Gustavo, which we've got a rough idea is the correct way of saying it. Plus, I feel like the amount that I've rewatched every single bit of football that I can watch of him playing, I do feel like I know him quite intimately now. I'm not sure I've seen a player as outright violent as he has been so far in a very long time. I also don't think I've ever seen a booking as needless as the one that he picked up in the first half. Yes. I think the more that you look at that, the more that you think you really could have got sent off for that. It's an absolute hatchet job in an area of the field that it didn't need to be in a phase of play that had almost no threat to it whatsoever. And it seemed just purely spiteful.
Just marking his territory.
So daft. But it's simultaneously like you calm down, but also I very much hope he does not calm down because that's the whole point of him. Like, please do both, but just don't get sent off for it. That's kind of my hope.
So far this season, bear in mind we're only 9 games in and he's suspended for 3 of them. He's been sent off in one game after about how long had gone? About 64 minutes or something.
Yeah.
I was banned for another 3 games. And then in 2 other league games this season out of the 9, the ref has gone to him and said, if you even blink again, on about an hour.
For a challenge, and then he goes, "Oh, sorry, I misjudged it," and steps away. He just pushes it and pushes it, but he hasn't. He managed not to get sent off. I don't know what you're worried about.
I don't know at what point you can get a booking for cumulative fouls, can't you? I don't know at what point he gets sent off after 10 minutes in a game for sort of a season of cumulative fouls. And they'll just be like, we know which way this is going, Gus. So we're just nipping this in the bud right now before somebody gets hurt, because somebody will definitely get hurt. I know I could talk about him all day. I've never seen anyone tackle the way that he does, where he's able to simultaneously lead with the studs going towards the lower part of the leg, but also a shoulder charge that looks like a bull fighting a man.
Great stuff.
But,
and then you got Mark just having a word with him, a little mini word, like when he's taking him off after 60 minutes. He's like, I'm just going to tell you, bit much. Maybe don't do that anymore. But he'll be straight at it, won't he? And there will come a time where I think like you say, 10 minutes in, Robbins is going to have to take him off. And that'll be the best point of the season where it's like, yeah, it's too much already, Gustavo. I'm sorry, mate.
I loved the fact that when he was talking to him, is that there was a look on Gustavo's face that was like, yeah, no, you're right, actually. Might be a bit much.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't. He looked like he was sort of like pondering it. Like he was like, yeah, I guess actually, if I did calm it down a bit, I could probably see out a 90-minute game, couldn't I? Yeah, you're right. So I'll think about that, Mark. Thank you.
I'll try that 1 week.
Yeah, I mean, we'll come on to him, I imagine, because we're going to talk much more about the Reading game than we are about the Middlesbrough game. But forget all of the kind of the violence. I also thought he was brilliant as well.
He's class.
Yeah, and I think the more that game went on, both with and without him on the pitch, I think it was easy for me to reflect on actually how much we missed him over those last 3 games. The last of those games we just mentioned before was the Middlesbrough game. Bearing in mind that we've got a good fun one to talk about, we're not going to talk about Middlesbrough very much, I don't think. But Imogen, you've got any recollections, reflections from that game?
All of the above. I think, considering the week that we're all having, no one really needs to dwell on this. It was miserable at 0-0, and then we just completely fucked it up at the end, and that's pretty much my match review of it. I was just flicking through my notes before we started recording, and the bits really that stand out to me the most were that Robbins was wearing white Stan Smiths and Neil Warnock was in 90s football boots, which I very much liked. You don't see that enough these days. Kevin Blackwell's really aged. I have not seen him for a while, and he looked haggard.
Awful.
Yeah, didn't he?
I know. Where'd that come from?
Age,
I guess, coming for you.
Well, it will do that to you, and apparently it has done that to him. Yeah, I mean, we were pretty terrible. It was a dull game, but I thought we were going to get away with a 0-0. We didn't look like scoring, but equally we looked fairly calm. We had reasonable amounts of possession. I thought Morosi looked a bit worrying. I don't know. We haven't really talked about this, but I didn't think he had a brilliant game. He will insist on not catching the ball. And I get the benefits of a modern day punch, and I get that it might just be a 90s mindset, but just some old fashioned catching wouldn't go amiss at times. I thought he was not very commanding in his box, which is unusual for him, because I usually don't feel too concerned. I don't know how either of you felt about him, whether you noticed anything.
I had views more on the fact that he didn't save anything, which it's a bit harsh because he's saved a fair amount this season. But I just remember watching that match thinking, I wouldn't mind if you saved a few shots, because we are letting in a hell of a lot of goals, and not that they're all his fault, but a lot of them are going kind of right at him. And I'm really, really wary of even criticising him, just because we don't have anything else. And also, he was really good last season, and he is good, and he's not a problem.
Yeah.
But I get greedy, and I just sometimes want, I've got memories of Westwood always in my mind, and I still think, just save that one, will you, please? Just do it, Gordon Banks. But maybe that's a bit much.
No, I don't think it is. I think that's entirely fair. I don't know. I wasn't very confident. Particularly, they had Roberts cutting in quite a lot down that whichever side he was on. I can't remember now.
Yeah, he looked good, didn't he?
He looked, incredible, and we looked worried every time they came near us. They didn't trouble us too much, and then there was that horror mix-up between McFadden and Hyam towards, what was it, the 85th, 86th minute, something like that. The camera angle wasn't brilliant. I don't know if it was Hyam's man or whether it was a mix-up between them, but it looked like there was a lack of communication between the two. And then my video froze on, aptly enough, Hamer, whatever, Gustavo, having a deep, meaningful conversation with the referee, and the video was not restored until the end of the game. But I could still hear Clive describing the second Middlesbrough goal. And by that point, I think I lost the will to live. But not great. I don't think many people came out of it with much glory. Godden worked pretty hard, but he was far too deep. He was sitting pretty much in the midfield, and he's of no use to me there. He wasn't really getting any breaks from midfield, probably because he was in it. I thought Sheaf was, he's just so laborious on the ball, man. He really takes his time, and we haven't worked out that we don't have that time on the ball that we had in League One. We've got to be quicker with it. And
can I just check? Are you talking about man of the match against Reading, Ben Sheaf? There?
That's right. Yeah.
The unanimous man of the match against Reading, Ben Sheaf.
Yeah, everyone's favourite from Arsenal.
The Sheaf Naissance, as I think nobody's calling it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't great. I think it was the most frustrating because unlike the Blackburn game where we were played off the park completely from the start, even before the sending off, this one looked like we could scrape a point from it, and then we just capitulated.
Yeah, 100%. That was why, and it was actually, like you say, we just completely chucked it in the bin. Just out of no, there's no reason to not.
No.
Middlesbrough looked like they were happy with the draw as well. I mean, Middlesbrough, to my knowledge, from what I've seen of them this season, they always look happy for a draw, and then just leave it to the gods as to see which team scores. But and then as well, we were so horribly caught on what, roughly speaking, was the break, but not really. It sort of suggests that we'd try to mobilise some people forward, but instead what happened is we'd ambled about a bit, and then we were hopelessly all out of position at the back for no real reason at all. And I think you're right. I think we could have actually come out of that with heads held medium and with a draw, and in the end it really felt like a kick to the teeth, didn't it, to lose 2-0? You just think, wow. So yeah,
it felt like a big moment just in terms of how everybody was feeling about the team. Like, we started the season on and off. We looked pretty good in games. We had a few bad games, but we won that game against QPR, and then we've been on this run, and then it just got to that point where you're like, oh, hang on. Even the teams that aren't very good and playing pretty shit are finding a way to win against us. So it just became, when losing that game 2-0, it was like, oh shit, okay, we've got to do something about this now, because whatever we had on the pitch, you don't go through that run of not winning in 5 games without having a major knock to the confidence. So it felt like, moving from that game to Reading, we needed Mark to do his stuff, and I'm very glad he did.
What did he do, Neil?
Well, what he did, Joey, was he changed the formation, which is something we've all been calling for. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be that complicated. So, we keep saying it, in a way, Godden is isolated in some form. So whether it was in the Middlesbrough game where he's just playing his own role, dropping deep, trying to do whatever he can to get the ball, but still leaving the upper part of the pitch isolated, or early on in some of the earlier games, he's just been playing up front by himself, and we just haven't had a chance to get the wing backs up with him or have anyone to support him or carry it. So it's been a problem. Mark, being the football manager that he is and being the genius that he is, decided, well, maybe we'll go 2 up front. And even the formation wasn't too complicated. So people are sort of saying, is it 3-4-1-2, blah blah. To me, it felt like a 3-5-2. It felt like we had a standard sort of wing back system, and then you just had 3 players in the middle playing relatively solid, and Shipley and Hamer moving forward to support from the central part of the pitch. And I thought that was smart. It just added a little bit of solidity to the system, getting Max up front. But then also quite a big call was McFadzean taking him out of the starting lineup and putting, I think, pound for pound, our 3 best defenders in the back 3, and just giving them a chance to maybe bring a little bit more solidity there, because the shit show of the goals against Middlesbrough, again, while Haim's been playing well individually, and even McFadzean has had a couple of good individual performances, I think as a shape recently I've been really scared stiff of our defence. I just all manner of stuff has been going wrong, and I think he made the right call in just switching that up. Even though McFadzean might strike you as a leader, it made more sense just to bring a bit more, just a clean slate, bit of change, maybe less lunacy. Although I've got to be honest. Ostergaard striking me as a bit of a maniac as well with some of his challenges, but I'll let him off. So yeah, he made all these formational changes, and I think just as a general kind of sturdy unit, it helped us, and it aided what was a really enjoyable game. And that was good because we needed an enjoyable game because it's been a while, especially when you're not there. I follow it hard enough to try and get up for a match when you're watching it. When you're not scoring goals and you're letting in crap goals, and you're so used to winning the league, you need a little bit more from your team. So I've been getting a little bit frustrated recently. So it was a really, really good game. I mean, we started okay. Darbo started really shakily actually. I don't know what was going on with him, but he seemed very aware that he was on telly, and was making a few wacky mistakes and wacky passes. Like I say, Hamer showed why he'd been missed. I just think he's class act, and just even the simple stuff, it just looks class. And for the goal, his pass through, he started it. I mean, it's a really hard pass, but also he made it look easy, slotted it through, and then he just sauntered his way to the edge of the box. And Godden, somehow, he's a fairly slow player, won the acceleration race to get to the ball, knocked it back to Hamer, and it was like the reverse Shipley kind of sliced out sort of inside of the foot into the corner. And it was just one of those games where a nice low shot, skipping on the ground, was the way to go. And it was a great start. And was it the first time Reading gone behind? Did I see that today? Is that right?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, which is a big deal. I mean, they started the season top of the league and virtually 100%. To get that goal really set us up, and I think we got a lot of confidence from that, and lots of smiles on the pitch. And Reading themselves didn't strike me as looking like a top of the table team. They didn't perform as a top of the table team would, but it's only been a few games, and there may be many reasons why they will or won't be there at the end of the season. They could be doing what we've done in previous seasons, where you just had a good run, you get to the top, but actually you probably haven't got the wherewithal to stay there. One thing they do have is that Lucas Yao player, who probably the best player in the league. I think he really stood out as somebody who could do what he likes. And not to get too into the second half, but I will move there because my notes are moving me there. His goal was really good. Although I don't want to get too Bren Sheaf critical, but I'm struggling with him still. Mainly because he got man of the match in a game where I remember basically calling him out while I was watching it, saying, I haven't seen him touch the ball in 25 minutes. And then 10 minutes later, Oggy was saying he was man of the match. And it confused the hell out of me because I thought, I get worried that I get a bit judgmental. And because I've got opinion in my mind, I'm just confirmation bias and all that stuff. But he wasn't good in that game. And then again, he made a real bad mistake for their goal, just lamely dinking the ball to their player and allowing that to kind of happen. But he performed well enough. He was getting involved. He was sturdy enough. But there's still a little bit of work to be done, I think. I mean, my call would always be to have Liam Kelly in the team ahead of him. What would you guys do?
Imogen, what would you do?
Yeah, Kelly and Hamer all day long. I think Kelly just gives you a bit more defensive backup that Sheaf doesn't have yet. I feel calmer when Kelly's in it.
Yeah, he's a proper pro, but I just think we'll got a better chance of controlling that midfield when you got somebody like him alongside Hamer. How long are we going to go this season not being able to pronounce that man's name?
So we know what the problem is, don't we? Is that because the answer is Hamer, but I don't really think you can say that, can you?
But where are you getting Hamer from?
From his own YouTube video of him pronouncing his own name.
Right. Okay, reasonable.
Yeah, a mate of mine who lives in Amsterdam, when we were talking about it on like the very first part of this season, he sent me a YouTube video from while he was at Zwolle, and he introduces himself. He says, like, whatever is Dutch for "Hi, I am Gustavo Hamer," and that's how he says his surname. So, I mean, I'd be loath to argue with the man for a number of reasons.
No, I agree. The reason I ask is because the Sky Sports commentary on Friday called him Hamer, and he made a point of saying, for those of you who don't agree, I've actually looked it up, and I think you'll find that is the correct pronunciation. I was like, I don't know where he got that from.
Well, that reminds me of the time when that guy who said that Ronaldo was pronounced Ronaldo because it was Portuguese. It's like, mate, do not have the courage of your own convictions with that point. That is wrong.
Well, I obviously prefer the idea that he's called Hamer, because that would be fabulous nominative determinism, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But I could just quickly rewind to Sheaf for a second. So there's two things I'd like to point
it's
out
definitely
about
Sheaf. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah. Is one, I think there's a distinction to be drawn between saying that someone isn't playing well and saying that someone is a bad player. And I think that there's a temptation to assume that because we've said he hasn't had a great start, I've also seen that conflated by morons on Twitter as usual as saying, "Oh, give him a chance." And you kind of like, well, it's not. I'm not saying I've written him off. I'm just saying that his first performances haven't been very good. The other thing with a player like that is I think it's the ultimate position where a player is beholden to the players around him and the quality of the overall attacking play. The biggest case in point, I would say, is John Fleck, who we, by turns, had seen being absolutely amazing and absolutely woeful. And it tended, when you look back with the benefit of hindsight, to be based around where he was, who was around him. Does that make sense?
That's fair. No, absolutely.
For what is just a sort of a recycler. But the flip side of that is that I think what we were sold on was the idea that he was a much more robust defensive presence. And I don't see that in him particularly yet. And that, I think, ultimately is why Kelly seems like such a more palatable option next to Hamer, because they just provide us with a more solid base, don't they? And especially when we're keen to get the whole full backs or the wing backs much higher up the pitch, I'd be more than happy to have two defensive midfielders, especially given that we've got four central midfielders, depending on what we play. I'm more than happy to have two that just sit, because we've got attacking presence elsewhere, haven't we?
Yeah, with that system, absolutely. And a lot of it, for me, just comes down to kind of trust. And I don't know him enough as a player at the moment to trust him. And the only thing we can go on is his performances, or are his performances. And, he does some good stuff. But at the moment, he also does quite a lot of frustrating stuff. And, you got to balance it all. And I'm with you. I feel like Kelly right now, and maybe there's a reason. I mean, he's just come back from injury. I mean, I would have thought Robbins will put him straight back in, to be honest. But I just feel like Kelly is the sounder option in there. But having won the other day, it seems unlikely that he's going to be shifted anytime soon now. I think it's he's trying to work with it. And I'm guarantee, in training, I reckon he'll probably is class. He's got everything about him. He's a proper athlete. You can see he's a decent player. He's making some mistakes. So I'm very willing to, give him a shot as a player. I have my preferences above him at the moment, so that's it's one of those. He's still young, and we don't really know who he is, but there are I would say better options out there. But that's enough on Sheaf, poor lad. Let's move on to so they've just scored. I'm using that weird footballer parlance where it's not just happened, but so we responded. We responded pretty well. By scoring. So Max should have scored. He had that sort of Connor Cody-esque attempt where the ball just lands on the floor, and you stab your foot at it. And you football the world, he'll put that away, which would be absolutely amazing for him, because he's judged before he'd even played in the Championship as there's no chance this guy can play in the Championship. But I got a good feeling about him. I reckon he could do a job in the league.
The thing is that it's a little bit like, for me, when Clive Platt came in, where actually a player like that was so needed that it almost didn't really matter how good or bad he was. It just was important that he was there. I didn't think he had a terrible game, but the way that he was able to give us that few seconds of the ball sticking in that area, and the fact that it meant that we'd got someone who we could reluctantly punt something up to, it almost didn't matter how good or bad a job he did. It was something more than nothing, wasn't it?
And it's so important, I think, in the system, and especially the players we've got, is just to occupy the defence more than we have been doing. Like, you can't expect Godden to do it all. And what's been happening is we've been getting the ball forward to him, and he's been having to. And even when he does manage to cause them a little bit of grief, it's not enough. They've always got an out ball to get out of that problematic situation. Whereas the other day, suddenly you've got Godden doing what he's continued to do all season, which is actually do a really good job up front. You've then got Biamu up there getting in the way as well, and you've got also the wing backs, pushing on and actually having a good old chance of getting some of the knockdowns as well. So it's really simple. It's just an extra player in that area, but an extra player who's just going to cause them a bit of menace, which is exactly what we needed. So no, I was pleased with him. Pleased that he got onto the pitch. Pleased that he put in a decent performance for himself, and would have been nice to see him score. But what happened is, obviously, we then got a corner from that, and the defence did it makes a lot of sense. You let the right back who's not scored for Coventry shoot from 30 yards with his left foot. I mean, you sort of get thinking, okay, probably let him shoot. And it's the sort of thing I'd be saying if I wasn't, let him shoot, go on, why not? And then he shot and he did what you need to do. Hard and low, skipped across the surface. The keeper made a save, and it came to Godden, who showed what a good poacher he is, and he put it away. And, I think it was a deserving lead again. I thought we were playing well. And, he stuck that in the net as per. 4 goals for him this season. He's made a really good start to the campaign. So that was an assist and a goal. And then, I don't know how long it was afterwards, but then McCallum came on, and same situation. And this was a situation where they got very confused, because McCallum is a left-footed player. They should have known this. He's the sort of player who scored actually probably 4 goals from outside the area already in his short career.
He has form for hitting them well.
Yeah, you're like, you've just learned a lesson here. Don't let this guy shoot. And even though the commentator didn't seem to realise that he was left-footed as well. And I mean, he hit it hard. It had a slight wobble, but you got to be honest, that keeper has to be saving it because it's right at his fists. So, I mean, Sky let him get away with that a bit because it was.
Well, I was going to ask Imogen to elaborate on this a little bit. Did you watched it on Sky, didn't you, Imogen?
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you feel about Sky's take on the keeping of that goal?
Well, first they seemed to think that it took a deflection when it absolutely didn't, until it hit the keeper, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they gave it the credit it deserved. I mean, it was marvelous, and they just sort of, keep it.
I more mean that
a bit of a mix, wasn't it?
Well, I thought that they were just incredibly charitable to their keeper, because that is admittedly a well-struck long-range shot, but at chest height and not moving much. Really, the keeper he could have just. If he'd have just stood still, you'd have imagined that it would have hit him and bounced away.
It's one of those where they have penalties where they pass it down the middle, and you sort of think you could literally stand there and pass it back to me. But they've already chucked themselves.
You could have just let it hit your ankles or something. This was. I couldn't understand how he'd managed to not save it, and yet the Sky commentators were like, "You don't save them." And you're like, well, most people would. That's not. I don't know if you're mates or what, but it didn't really move in the air, and it didn't get a deflection, and he hit it from about in his own half, like you weren't unsighted. But I just couldn't believe that they were like, that is literally unstoppable. Like, I just don't think.
Did you see how much it moved? Did you?
Go on then,
Neil. I mean, I don't know much about that keeper, but I understand it was out of character. Or at least you'd hope so, wouldn't you? I mean, it was. He did have a great game.
Quality keeper, I believe, or certainly that he is Champions League pedigree. Well, I believe so. Yeah, I might be getting confused with someone else, but I'm sure that he's got like reasonable, sizable champion. Like he's a very good keeper, but that had a massive off day there.
Yeah, it was. No, he had a bit of a shit show.
But
Really.
I also don't want that to take away from McCallum, because, as you say with Dabo, I sometimes think. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I think that's why it's worth shooting from range and putting, just get something in there and ask questions of them. I think it's why I'm constantly obsessed with players not being in the box when crosses are coming in, because you just think it's just so easy to defend. Whereas a shot that's on target from 35 years and it was a wet evening, you do think, look, if you don't know what's going to happen, give it a whirl. So I think all credit to him, but that's exactly why you do that sort of thing, isn't it? In case the keeper just falls asleep.
What was really pleasing for me was I think that might be the first time in history I've ever actually told a player to shoot from that. I'm usually saying don't shoot, and this was the first time I was like, yeah, actually have a go, and he did, and he scored. And the first angle, when you see it live, it did actually look like a bit of a rocket, didn't it? But then you do have to look through the replays and realise not so much. But no,
it's a beautifully struck shot. It's just the fact that it's going right in the centre of the goal.
Yeah,
if anything, he's hit it too well.
I should continue to hit him too well. I think I'd be happy with that. Keep going. He's doing well at right back. Strangely, right wing back. He is. Yeah. He just seems to. He's come back and he's done that thing where, when they get their move, their ego's not the word I mean, but their belief in themselves is far bigger. So now he almost has this aura of someone who thinks he's a good player. Like, better than a lot of players. And that's me trying to not being disparaging at all. It's a good thing. He looks really confident on the ball and stuff. And even at right back, it's really kind of confusing for their players to see this left-footed right back coming in all the time. And I think, it's interesting to see how he's going to fit in. He's going to continue to play. I'm sure he'll have 10 minutes here and there. But when you've got Dabo and Giles, that's the way, we need to give him some credit. I thought he had a really good game the other night. And his crossing is fantastic. He'll always find a way to get the ball into the box. But, back to McCallum, interesting. He looks a really good player, and interesting to see how we're going to fit him into the team, because Robbins does love him. And, he's going to be keen to get him in wherever he can. But, no, I guess we need a squad. So, I'm sure he'll get plenty of opportunities this season. And it was a good performance from him, really, when he came on. And let's face it, he wasn't on for too long. But, 10 minutes and he got himself a goal, and he looked pretty strong. And really, I mean, that made it 3-1. They got the goal back to make it 3-2. I mean, I'd put that down to Rose being tired, to be honest. I think he fell asleep. Just got the 1-2 knocked it around him, and he didn't really move from his single position. The guy jabbed it at Morosi, and it went straight past him. But I'll be honest, I was nervous because it's us, but not really nervous because of the way we're playing. I just thought we kind of had them. We did all right to kind of keep the ball a little bit, and we got through the 5 minutes all right, and we finished the game with a lovely sort of fist pump from Mark Robbins on the sidelines. The most excited I've seen him be since Biamu scored in the semi-final. So that was good times, really. Good win, and I'm feeling all pumped again.
Imogen, your recollections from this one, other than what Neil's already covered.
I felt more nervous than Neil did in the final few minutes. I was sure we would engineer a draw out of it, but I don't have the faith that Neil does. I thought we looked more engaged than we have in probably. Since the QPR game, but even prior to that, I think we looked like we had ideas. It's always felt like we've only got one path, and if it doesn't work out, we don't have any plan Bs. But I think we're starting to look a little bit more settled, a little less fearful of what the opposition are throwing at us. And maybe it just that age-old cov of yore, where we were always better against the bigger teams. Maybe we were just a bit more up for it this time, and we were well drilled. We knew what we were doing. Neil mentioned Giles. I think he deserves even more of a mention. I thought he played so well on Friday. His work ethic was immense, but he was also creating a lot. I mean, obviously the first goal, but all the way through, his intelligence was a real asset to us. So I like him. Well done.
Well done indeed. Not to say I'm hilarious, but I was just reading through my notes, and I've written down fair play to the players who performed incredibly well. Hyam, Ostergaard, Giles, Godden, Hamer, not Sheaf. That seems a bit harsh again. I don't think I meant it quite like that, but I was just reading through that. I mean, it looks like I've got a real grudge against the guy.
I mean, the more that you're saying that you haven't, the more it sounds like you have as well.
I know, I am protesting a lot.
I think the lady does protest too much.
That would be the saying that I forgot.
I want to sort of quickly throw something in that I think we've, in a roundabout way, we've probably touched on somewhat today and previously. But I thought the two crucial things overall, and I'll use this as a bridge to ask you about what we do in the next games, is I thought this season has put into focus last season that we were very lucky that in League One there aren't a massive plethora of teams really capable of a orchestrated high press. So the biggest problem I think we've had this season is the fact that teams like Blackburn, Bournemouth, Brentford have given us no time when we're playing the ball out from the back.
Yes.
And that's been then really badly hampered by then we haven't got anybody to go long to. And I think that is part of the reason as why Sheaf has looked as I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying this, like inept or out of his depth. Do you know what I mean by that? I don't mean to be cruel, but I mean in a very literal sense. Is that I think he is looking around and not finding the bodies, and he's not Andrea Pirlo, so he can't be Andrea Pirlo basically. And I think that the two things that worked so well for us against Reading, I don't think they asked us a huge amount of questions in that same way. I thought their attacking players were kind of loose, old school, mercurial talents as opposed to hardcore sort of gegenpressing type players. And I thought that we did then, just like I say, in having Biamu, it meant that when we did need to go long, just had that player there. The other thing that we haven't talked about with Biamu coming in is that normally when you bring a player in or make a sort of tactical switch like that, it comes with some level of sacrifice. But actually, to bring him in hasn't really cost us anything in the team, which I know it sounds just as harsh as what we're saying about Sheaf, but to drop one of the underperforming attacking midfielders out that we're playing that were largely anonymous throughout the course of a 90-minute period. I mean, it's almost like bringing in an extra player rather than a replacement player. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. No, it is strange to think that way. But when you think, like you say, you had two players attacking, it's Allen and O'Hare. Neither of getting in the game at all because they've been bypassed. What you do, you drop a midfielder into the midfield, so you gain the midfielder, but then you also gain an attacker. It makes perfect sense.
Watching it, and I think it's probably, it won't. Tomorrow, well, Wednesday will prove to be, and Saturday will prove that obviously it's not as simple as that. But would either of you two change the formation from? I mean, Neil, would you change the formation for Wednesday?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would. I think, like you said, I mean, I just think having the different type of options means we can adjust to how the game goes. I mean, we'll hear from Dom about how they play and whether they're a kind of a pressing team and whether that will hamper our ability to pass out from the back or not. But I think confidence and momentum is such a big thing. Paul made a really good point on Twitter, and it's such a simple point, but more players play to their capabilities, and they played well, which is such a big thing recently that a lot of them have been playing poorly. Whereas actually, I'm very much for judging people on what can they actually do, because that's a kind of they might not be able to do it every game, but that's kind of the level you base it on. And a lot of the players the other day actually played to a level that we kind of expect from them. We've seen them play like that before, and so I'd stick with it. And all we've said about Sheaf, I wouldn't have any issue with Robin sticking with the team in that sense as well, just because you've got to build some sort of connection between the players, and if that's something that could build and the confidence can kind of manifest itself in another strong performance. And yeah, I'm all for keeping the team as it was.
Imogen, what would you do?
I would keep it the same as it is. I think Robins will keep it the same as it is, but that doesn't mean I'm averse to a bit of a swap around. We've got so many games coming up. I mean, international break aside, the fixture list is fairly congested, and we're playing in a league where players are more intelligent and they're going to work us out. They are going to find out what our weaknesses are and be able to counteract any of our strengths. So if we can have several ideas instead of, in last season, we had the formation pretty much from the Fleetwood game, and we stuck with it and it worked.
Yeah.
I don't know if that will be as successful this year because we're up against better teams, obviously, but they will have worked us out a lot quicker. And I think if we can employ all of the squad members, we've still got, let's not forget, we've got Bakayoko to come in. I mean, these are big guns that we're talking about here.
This is going to be my next question was so if we are agreed that we have two up front, is it Bakayoko that comes in? I mean, the question otherwise is Tyler Walker capable of doing the job that Biamu's up front doing?
See, I'm not so sure. Mainly because I don't really know much about Tyler Walker, but I'm very pleased with Godden and Biamu as a kind of concept. I want to stick with those two. I want to see what they can do. I think they could kind of work. They both offer something different, and Biamu is just more physical than either of them really. And Walker, I have this big thing about like strikers having some sort of physical attribute as well as just being technically good. And Godden doesn't really have any, but he can finish. Walker, I guess, is kind of he can finish as well, but he's not that quick, and he's relatively tall, but he's not renowned for being a great a target man. But Biamu's he really does occupy people. So I think that nice little mix between those two is something I'd want to persist with. And the other thing we've got to say is we joke about Baka. He won't even be able to get on the bench. You look at our bench the other day; it's really strong. McFadden, Kelly, Allen, O'Hare, Wilson, Walker, McCallum. That's a good bench.
I mean, it's all relative though, because we are talking about Baka.
True story.
So whilst I agree with you that bench isn't bad, he is.
He is. It's just
that's unkind.
He is bad.
I feel like we've spent a lot of time sort of backtracking on the idea that we're making an objective judgment on Sheaf. Haven't we seen enough of Bakayoko that we can confidently say whether we like him or not, he is not a footballer, is he? That's not. haven't we got enough evidence by now?
Warsaw highlights video? It's amazing. That's the player I want in our team. Honestly, go back and watch it.
No, I agree with you. I can see why we bought him. Like, there's a lot. Like, I think if you would, he was RoboCop. You'd get him and you'd be like, I think we could probably make a player out of these parts. But they were wrong.
Did I hear a whisper that he'd kind of been bomb squadded with Castaneer? Kind of, not that might be harsh, but he's dropped down the pecking order a little bit now.
Well, evidently, I guess. I mean, I don't know about you. I was surprised that it was Biamu up front out of the two of them, but but it probably tells a story unless he's poorly or whatever. Yeah, there we go.
We'll see.
I think that might be all we've got to say about this. Is that right?
I would have thought so.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to break with tradition, and I think I'm going to say goodbye to you guys. Then I'm going to say hello to Dom, and that's how we're going to end this today. Because I think it's going to be a bit disingenuous to invite him here now, or just put the audio in here, and then come back and just say bye to you guys. I think it's a bit much.
All right, we'll see how this comes together.
Well,
I'm dubious.
Okay. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you, Neil.
Well, if I don't speak to you again, Joey, thanks.
Thank you, Imogen.
Thanks, Joey.
Thank you for listening. Bye. And hi, Dom.
Hiya, how's it going?
Yeah, very well, thank you. 2 previews for us this week, as there's probably going to be a lot of weeks this season. Nottingham Forest first. Funny old time for them, I'm going to say, as if I know fully what's happening to them.
Yeah, so last season it seemed like they'd gotten off finally on the right track, really, where for so long they just churned through managers and players and nothing really seemed to make sense with them. And then under Sabri Lamucci, they weren't exactly thrilling, but they were very effective at winning games and just looked a really good team unit. And then in the final weeks of the season, they just completely seemed to lose their plot. I think part of it was down to Lamucci resting players in anticipation of making the playoffs, because it would have taken just a wild swing in goal difference and just some terrible results for them to miss out. And then that's exactly what happened. They lost about 4-1 on the final day of the season to miss out on goal difference to Swansea in the playoffs. And you just kind of knew from that point that he was never going to be able to salvage the situation. And they had a crazy summer where they just signed players left, right and centre. And You just watch it for it's like, what on earth are they doing? It's the same mistakes time again, and unsurprisingly, they were just disjointed at the start of the season. Then they had to sack Lamucci, and now they've got Chris Hughton in, and he's doing his normal job of just making teams really, really solid. I suppose that really kind of wasn't the issue with Nottingham Forest, but still, I think someone who's sensible at a club that is not that sensible and hasn't been for about 12 years is going to be a good combination. And he's got a big squad to try and figure out who is going to form a decent team out of the constituent parts. And he's already gone to Brighton to bring in Anthony Knockout to just add to their attacking options, which is probably the best area of the team, where they've got quite a few different kind of good championship level attacking players to choose from. So Joe Lolly, along with Knockout out wide, Lolly's just an absolutely rapid winger, just gets past players so quickly and very direct, and will either fire crosses across the goal or get shots in himself. And they've got Sammy Amiobi, who no one really knew what kind of player he was. Had a good spell at Bolton, and at Forest he's become quite an effective wide player, gets quite a few assists, can fade in and out of games, but he's got good technique and is a really good outlet for them. And then they've also got Luke Freeman to call upon, as a really good creative player. And then in front of that, you've got either Lyle Taylor or Lewis Graben, who are really solid, experienced strikers at this level. What they're really missing is probably a maker based on midfield. There's got a load of quite utilitarian defensive midfielders called upon, who all seem much of a muchness. And I think that's kind of been the issue in recent weeks, where they've been solid, they can defend, they can counter on teams, but they don't really have someone who can knit it together in that area of the pitch. And of course, a familiar name for us will be Cyrus Christie, who's their current right back, who, since leaving us for Derby, has sort of been the go-to championship top half back. And then as soon as you get promoted, you kind of want someone a little bit better. But that's still a pretty good career in my book. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. It's quite a big one for Nottingham Forest in particular, after losing at the weekend, and after this game they've got Wickham, so they're going to be targeting those two games to really get going. The record under Houghton is they've won a game, they've lost a game, and drawn the rest, and it hasn't really felt like it's got going yet. But that's not the job Houghton tends to do, sort of a slow burn, and this could be a crucial week for them in starting to get things moving. So that's what we've got to be
on our kind of chances. I know that Paul has talked an awful lot over the last few weeks about this being a really crucial game for us. I'm not totally sure that I'm fully along with that. What would you say?
Yeah, I suppose part of it is because you don't really expect Nottingham Forest to be around this end of the table for that much of the season. They might not go on and make it to the playoffs this year. Results soon and settle into a mid-table position. So I think from that perspective, this is the kind of away game where a draw would be a decent result. But I think sort of looking ahead into tough, as we sort of get to that 10-game mark, we are a little bit behind where we'd need to be to be on track for a staying up. It would be a good game to win. It's in the category of games that we can win, but it's absolutely make or break. It's not a relegation 6-pointer, I don't imagine.
No, nor I mean, especially now for us, when I guess in any league, when a manager gets sacked that you're in, is you look at who they recruit, and you're kind of hoping for some, lunatic. you're hoping really for Dean Saunders. And you think, right, okay, that's one team that will finish below us then. As soon as it's Houghton, you kind of think, no, not that they'll be all right.
No.
They probably won't be amazing, but they probably will be absolutely fine and better than us. But there you go. Then surely the trickier of the two, and you'll probably correct me on this, but the Watford after that.
Yes, a really interesting time of the season for Watford, where they started the season just looking far too good for the Championship without playing amazingly. It just looked like they had too many good players to call upon to ever really be in danger of conceding too many goals, and always just having that ability to sting teams at the other end through the attacking quality that they had. But recent weeks, it just seems there's a few signs of frustration mounting there. I think it kind of mounts from the transfer window, where they haven't really been able to offload as many players as I think they might have wanted to from the Premier League era. And it certainly seems like the manager, Vladimir Ivic, who had managed quite successfully in Israel over the past couple of years, he seems a little frustrated that it's not really his team. Though I suppose when you go to Watford and with the way they sort of run the club, then you can't really expect it to be your team. That's a little bit unrealistic. But it does seem like they started off getting results and seemed disjointed. Now they're just looking a bit more of a mess, really, in terms of sort of whether it benefit from that situation. Sort of depends really on our ability to break down what is a really good defensive unit. When you got someone like Craig Cathcart in there, you've got Ben Wilmot, had a very good loan spell at Swansea last season and is certainly like a top half Championship defender. Got a few others. And I think the main thing about Watford is just how physical this team is, and just that extra level of athleticism, which is going to be a major area of advantage. And then in goal, they've got Ben Foster, who was he about 37, 38, still a really good goalkeeper, probably still a top flight quality goalkeeper. Of course, someone who I think is from Leamington as well.
Oh yeah.
So remember, little local reunion of him. Depending on whether he actually cares about Coventry, you never know.
I think I probably guess.
Yeah. And sort of a bit like Nottingham Forest, the problem area seems to be central midfield, where they've got some really solid defensive kind of midfielders like Etienne Capoue, Nathaniel Chalabar. They've got Tom Cleverley in there, who's surprisingly old. He's about 34, I think. His career seems to have gone away in the blink of an eye. And they're kind of waiting on Will Hughes to get fit to supply that level of creativity. They were hoping that Domingos Quina, who is a very promising young player, would kind of fill those boots, but doesn't seem to be the case. The main area of creativity at the moment is in wide areas. I've been playing with a back three, so 3 wing backs mainly. Kiko Femenia, who in the Premier League looked quite a solid player, but at Championship level, and there's a right-footed left wing back, is very rampaging and getting into dangerous areas. And he can also play Ken Samer there, who again has played quite a few games at Premier League level without really lining it up. He was part of Graham Potter's Osterson side. If anyone remember their run in the Europa League, where they got quite far. It's a very pacey winger. And then they've also got Ismail Assar, again, someone who's played in the Europa League quite recently and was rated at 40 million over the summer, and with Liverpool and Manchester United. So that's the level of talent Watford have. Doesn't feel like the constituent pieces have quite come together yet, and maybe they never will because they're never meant to. Just like the way all those different bits of the side match together doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense, but they are the kind of team who are going to win a lot of games this season by just not conceding and then just knocking teams off at the other end.
Lovely. Any final thoughts on either of those two?
It's going to be interesting. I'd like to see a few points from those games just to build that confidence from the Reading game, where we've got that result. It wasn't a fantastic performance, and I think that's the missing piece we need to aspire to now at both ends of the pitch. We're not great at this level, and we've got the result, and we just need to take that confidence from it and start to look more in control of things at this level. Otherwise, it's going to be a huge struggle this season. So yeah, let's keep the points ticking over. That look scary, but teams that aren't in great situations at the moment, then that if we're organised, if we're competitive, if robust, we can cause some problems.
Beautiful. Right, thanks, Tom. Speak to you next week.
Okay, speak to you then.